Imagine your world, the familiar one, with its walls, its fences, the routines, you feel safe. But what if right next door, like maybe just 2 yards away, there's this whole other country, a hidden, terrifying one you've never really looked at? Today, we're doing a deep dive into that hidden place. We're focusing on the profound and really disorienting experience of arrest, especially arrest inside a system that was basically designed to make people just disappear.
Right. And we're drawing on some really detailed material here, excerpts from an account that focuses specifically on its first chapter, which is just called Arrest. It really digs into the mechanics,
Yep.
and the human side of it, what the source calls this breaking point in someone's life, that moment that just flips everything upside down.
Okay, so our mission today is to try and unpack that. The psychological reality, the logistical stuff, what arrest actually meant in a system like that.
Yeah.
We want to try and understand why people reacted the way they did. And maybe uncover some surprising things, some unsettling aha moments about, human nature under that kind of extreme pressure.
Yeah, definitely.
So let's start at the beginning. How did people even get to this place, this clandestine archipelago, as the source calls it? It's not like it was on any map, right? You couldn't just, book a trip.
No, absolutely not. The source is pretty clear. There were very specific ways in. You had the administrators, right? The interrogators, camp bosses. They came through the Ministry of Internal Affairs training schools, like the official channels for the security apparatus. Then you had the guards, often just conscripts coming through military recruitment. But the vast, vast majority, the ones the text says go there to die, they had only one route in, solely and compulsorily, via arrest.
That's stark.
Yeah.
That single entry point. And the source describes that initial shock, that moment of arrest, in really powerful terms, doesn't it? It's more than just being detained.
Oh, absolutely. It calls arrest a bolt of lightning which has scored a direct hit on you, an unassimilable spiritual earthquake. It's painting it as this total rupture, not just legal, but mental, emotional. Imagine your whole reality, your sense of who you are just instantly shattered. That's the earthquake. It says it could drive people mad because, each of us is the center of the universe, and that universe is shattered when they hiss at you. You are under arrest.
Wow. And that question everyone asks, only me? What for? It just sounds like pure, stunned disbelief. Millions asking it, apparently.
Exactly. Millions and millions of times, the text says, and getting no answer. It's the sheer speed and violence of it. The source calls it an instantaneous shashing thrust, expulsion, somersault from one state into another. A blinding flash and a blow which shifts the present instantly into the past and the impossible into omnipotent actuality. It's like a switch flips and your entire world is gone, replaced by this impossible, terrifying new reality. There's no time to think, just shock.
We kind of had this picture in our heads, don't we? This sort of literary image of an arrest. The knock at night, maybe a sharp ring, then the door bursts open. The insolent entrance of the unwiped jackboots, the security guys. And often there's that civilian witness there, frightened, looking away.
Yeah, that civilian witness. The source says their role is actually pretty puzzling and quite grim when you look closer. It was supposedly a regulation left over from a time when people, actually checked what the police were doing. But in this system, it became, as the text puts it, torture for the witness too. Imagine being dragged out night after night to watch your own neighbors, your acquaintances, being arrested. You're forced to be part of it.
God, that's awful. And packing. The source mentions the victim with trembling hands trying to gather a few things, bit of food, soap. But nobody knows what is needed, what is permitted, what clothes are best to wear. And while they're scrambling, the agents are just rushing them, lying. You don't need anything. He'll feed you there. It's warm there. Just lies to hurry them along.
And once the person is actually taken away, it wasn't over for the apartment, not by a long shot. The source describes this alien, brutal, and crushing force taking over completely. For hours, they'd be breaking, ripping open, pulling from the walls, emptying things from wardrobes and desks onto the floor, shaking, jumping out, and ripping apart, piling up mountains of litter on the floor. Just total domination and destruction.
And here's where it gets really disturbing, I think. The nature of these searches. The source is emphatic. Nothing is sacred.
No, nothing. The examples it gives are, they're horrifying. There's a story about a locomotive engineer in Notion. His child had just died. The tiny coffin was right there in the room. During the search, they dumped the child's body out, searched the coffin. It's just beyond comprehension. It wasn't about finding evidence anymore. It was about pure violation.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah. Or breaking jars of medicine at a doctor's institute, calling it poisons, even when patients were begging them not to. Seizing irreplaceable things, ancient Tibetan manuscripts, Tangut texts that took decades to decipher later. There was an Orientalist, Nevsky, whose manuscripts were taken. 25 years after he was killed, he got a Lenin Prize posthumously for deciphering them. The irony is just bitter.
So it was destruction of culture, of knowledge, too.
Absolutely. Wiping out archives, alphabets for small nationalities, like Kier's Yenisei Ostak archive, gone, leaving a whole group without its written language. There's even a folk saying mentioned they are looking for something which was never put there. It perfectly captures the absurdity and menace of it all.
And making the arrested person carry the stuff they confiscated, like Nina Polchanaya having to haul her husband's papers.
Yeah.
Just adding insult to injury.
Exactly. Humiliation piled on top of everything else.
And for the families left behind, what happened to them? The source calls it the long tail end of a wrecked and devastated life.
It was often just silence. They'd try to deliver food parcels, maybe get some news, and they'd just hear someone barking from a window. Nobody here by that name, never heard of him. Total erasure.
Chilling.
And if they got the official response, deprived of the right to correspond, that almost certainly meant the person had been shot, executed. The source contrasts this sharply with, say, old revolutionaries like Babushkin, who Lenin wrote about. Babushkin knew the risks, knew what he was doing when he got caught. But the victims here, they were described as like helpless rabbits, just snatched into the void. It highlights the randomness, the lack of agency.
You mentioned earlier the science of it all. The source actually calls arrest a science.
It does. A specific segment of general penology, apparently, backed by social theory, and night arrests were a favorite method. The science behind that was pretty clear.
Okay, why the night?
Several advantages, according to the text. It throws everyone into terror, catches the victim groggy, half asleep. The security guys always have superiority in numbers, and crucially, it stops neighbors or friends, any potential supporters, from gathering outside. It isolates the victim instantly.
Makes sense, in a horrible way. And there was even a separate science of searches.
Yes, showing just how systematized this all was. The level of detail taught to law students about searching was extreme.
Like what?
Well, the source mentions advice like turning over 2 tons of manure, digging up cesspools, cleaning out entire collective farm plots, checking toilet bowls, dog houses, tearing apart mattresses, ripping adhesive tape off people's bodies, and this one is just... They even tore out metal teeth in the search for microfilm.
Metal teeth. Good grief. The paranoia? Or maybe just the excuse for brutality?
Probably both. And the methods of arrest themselves showed this weird, almost theatrical variety.
How so?
Well, sometimes it was disguised. Deceptive social stuff. Like Illar Mendel getting tickets to the Bolshoi Theater from her interrogator, then being arrested right there.
At the theater.
At the theater. Or Anna Skripnikova arrested in a taxi. The cab driver apparently knew the security organs didn't tip, so he was in on it. Boris Bukovsky bought a cake for a date, and the search party sliced it up looking for who knows what.
Unbelievable.
For VIPs, they might give them a fake promotion or a new assignment, then arrest them on the train. Or the sanatorium ticket trick. An ordinary person gets a surprise vacation voucher.
Let me guess.
Yep. Arrested at the station by a very pleasant young man. The source chillingly notes there was a GPU that's the secret police branch and prison cells in every station.
Everywhere.
Everywhere. Sometimes it was blatant, though. Public arrests. An American embassy employee grabbed on Gorky Street in broad daylight. The official news agency, TASS, just puts out no information. Standard procedure.
So it could be anyone, anywhere, anytime.
Pretty much. A religious pilgrim you shelter, the meter reader, someone on a bicycle, a train conductor, bank teller, cinema manager. You wouldn't see that concealed maroon-colored identification card until it was way too late.
It's just the amount of effort, the superfluous imagination, as the source puts it, the well-fed energy poured into these arrests. It makes you ask, like the source does, why? Why all the drama if people weren't going to resist anyway?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? The text suggests it wasn't just about catching people. It was about demonstrating absolute arbitrary power, instilling fear deep in the bones of society. Though it does note that during the really intense periods, like 45, 46 after the war, when they were arresting tens of thousands.
And couldn't keep up the theater.
Exactly. The excessive theatricality went out the window. It just became a squalid roll call, a grim, bureaucratic processing of huge numbers, much less creative.
So let's get back to that question of resistance, or the lack of it. Why was there, as the source says, no resistance whatsoever?
It seems like a combination of things. There was this pervasive feeling of doom, of being destined for destruction. Practically, escape was almost impossible with the internal passport system. You couldn't just disappear. And, as the text grimly puts it, a submissive sheep is a find for a wolf. The system relied on that lack of resistance.
And people just didn't understand how it worked.
Largely no. There was widespread ignorance of the mechanics of epidemic arrests. People didn't grasp that often it was just about filling quotas arbitrarily. There's that chilling example of the woman who just went to the security office to ask about a neighbor's baby, and they arrested her. Why? Because she was there. Handy. Already in their hands, as the source says.
Press wrong place, wrong time, fills a number. Horrifying. But there were exceptions, weren't there? People who didn't submit.
Very few, but yes. The source mentions Andrei Pavel. When the NKVD came for him, he didn't answer the door. He jumped out a window, somehow got away, made it to Siberia, lived under his own name, and they never got him.
Wow. One who got away.
A tiny exception that proves the rule, really. The overwhelming majority, the text says, behaved helplessly with a sense of doom.
And this universal innocence played a big part.
Definitely. It led to what the source calls a universal failure to act. People just couldn't believe it could happen to them if they hadn't done anything wrong. Maybe they won't take you, they thought. Maybe it will all blur over. There's the story of A.I. Linsky. A teacher warned he was on a list, but he stayed. Why? The whole school rests on my shoulders, he thought. How can they arrest me? They arrested him days later.
He thought being essential would save him.
Or Ivan Levitsky. He apparently understood the reality even as a kid. At 14, he said, "Every honest man is sure to go to prison." And sure enough, he was arrested at 23.
He saw it coming. But most people didn't. They held on to that belief.
That belief. Since you aren't guilty, then how can they arrest you? It's a mistake.
Right up until the end. Even as they were being led away, the source says, they thought, they'll set things straight and let me out.
It's heartbreaking, that misplaced faith in the system that's destroying them. And the detail that really gets me. Not only did they not resist, they even walked down the stairs on tiptoe, as you're ordered to do so your neighbors won't hear.
On tiptoe. Disappearing quietly.
Yeah.
God.
Yeah. It encapsulates the psychological control, doesn't it?
It really does. Which leads the author to ask that incredibly powerful, provocative question. What if it hadn't been like that? What would things have been like if every security operative, when he went out at night to make an arrest, had been uncertain whether he would return alive? What if people had realized they had nothing left to lose, set up ambushes, half a dozen people with axes, hammers, pokers?
The argument made is stark. Even limited resistance like that could have caused a shortage of officers and transport. Maybe the cursed machine would have grounded to a halt. But the lament follows, we didn't love freedom enough. And maybe even more crucially, we had no awareness of the real situation. People just didn't understand the game. The source even brings in Arthur Ransom, the British writer, observing how Russian workers back then seemed to embrace calls for sacrifices rather than actually defending their rights, a kind of societal inclination towards submission, perhaps.
That's a heavy thought. That passivity has a cost.
Not a massive one.
And those small details during the arrest itself.
Yeah.
Being told to face the wall, having your belt taken, resisting any single one seems pointless, right?
All right.
But the source says all these incidental irrelevances taken together implacably constitute the arrest.
Exactly. It's the accumulation of these small humiliations and controls that breaks you down. And the personal violation could hit harder than anything else. There's the example of Yevgenia Denisenko, just 19. What devastated her most wasn't the threat of prison, but having her personal diary read aloud by hostile strangers.
The invasion of her inner world.
Precisely. For many, the source suggests, the outrage inflicted by arrest on their personal feelings and attachments can be far, far stronger than their political beliefs or their fear of prison. It's about the destruction of the self.
Okay, but here's something really counterintuitive the source brings up. Some people actually felt relief, even happiness, when they were finally arrested.
Yeah, it's fascinating, isn't it? Especially during those epidemics of arrests.
Mm-hmm.
The constant waiting, the dread, the not knowing if tonight is the night. Apparently that was psychologically unbearable for some.
Worse than actually being taken.
For some, yes. The source gives examples. Teacher Sergei Koba felt relief. Vasily Vlasov, described as a fearless communist, apparently pined away waiting for his own arrest. When it finally happened, he felt marvelous.
Marvelous. Wow.
And priest Father Irekli. He hid successfully for 8 years. 8 years. But when they finally caught him in 1942, he reportedly sang hymns of praise to God. The burden of fear was lifted, even though he was going to prison.
That's incredible. The psychological weight of that fear must have been immense.
Absolutely crushing.
And then there were those who went almost eagerly. with pride and happiness.
Yes. Vera Rakova, a student, apparently dreamed of going to prison to meet her comrades. Yekaterina Olitskaya felt she wasn't worthy of arrest, but when it happened, she felt like freedom itself was expelling her. A sort of martyrdom complex,
A
perhaps.
very strange kind of acceptance or even embrace of it.
Definitely speaks to the complex psychology under extreme pressure. The author himself shares a really poignant moment about not speaking out during his own arrest. He was being led through Moscow in daylight, wasn't gagged or anything. But he says not a sound came from his parched lips. He just watched the crowds passing by, noting how they naively believed that you and your executioners are friends out for a stroll.
The invisibility of it all, even in plain sight.
And his own justification for silence is quite telling. He thought there were too few people on the street, maybe 200, to make a difference by crying out. He was saving his voice, maybe, for the 200 million he hoped to reach someday with his writing. A difficult personal calculus.
So let's talk about his own arrest then. He describes it as the easiest imaginable kind.
Relatively speaking, yes. It was wartime. He was an officer. He was just called to headquarters, told to surrender his pistol. He suspected nothing. Then, bam! Two counterintelligence guys grab him and shout, "You are under arrest."
And his first reaction.
The same as everyone else's. Me? What for? That universal cry of bewilderment.
Did he get an answer?
Surprisingly, yes. The brigade commander, Zakhar Georgievich Travkin, told him, "You have a friend on the first Ukrainian front." Implying correspondence or association was the crime.
Oh.
But then Travkin did something extraordinary. This commander, knowing the author was now officially an enemy of the people, stood up, walked around his desk, crossed that invisible quarantine line that separated the condemned from everyone else,
And
and shook the author's hand, wished him happiness.
wow, in that situation.
An incredibly courageous human act. The author notes it right away. It proved one can be a human being despite everything. A tiny flicker of defiance against the whole dehumanizing machine.
That's a powerful moment. But it didn't stop the process.
No, not at all. Straight after that, he was shoved into a punishment cell. A tiny closet in a German house meant for 3, now holding 4, thrown in after midnight.
And the cellmates.
3 tank officers, frontline soldiers, arrested for getting drunk and chasing some German girls. Sounds minor, right?
Yeah, especially in wartime.
But here's the twist. The source explains the perverse logic. If the girls had just been ordinary Germans, the officers could have raped and then shot them, almost seen as a soldier's prerogative in that context. But one of the girls happened to be the campaign wife, basically, the mistress of the local counterintelligence chief.
So it wasn't about the act, it was about disrespecting a VIP's property.
Exactly. So these decorated combat officers, stripped of rank, waiting for court-martial, for basically annoying the wrong person's girlfriend. It showed the author immediately how arbitrary and status-driven the justice was.
What a grim introduction.
Yeah.
And the source ends that chapter with the toilet call scene.
Oh, right. That ritual, ordered out, hands behind your backs, machine gunners watching, led to this small, snowy area soiled all over with human feces, utter degradation.
Grim.
And the master sergeant yelling, "Hurry it up! With us, they do it quickly!" But then one of the prisoners, a senior lieutenant, quietly pushes back. "With us, we do it slowly, in the Red Army." A tiny final assertion of dignity in the face of it all.
Holding on to some shred of their former identity.
Yeah. And that, the author says, those were his first gulps of prison air. A brutal immersion into this new reality.
So reflecting on this whole deep dive into just the arrest part, we've gone from that initial shattering shock, the psychological earthquake,
Yeah.
through the meticulous and often really deceptive methods they used, the science of it all.
Right. The systematic violation of everything personal, the searches, the lies, the way it impacted not just the victim, but the family, the witnesses.
And the sheer power of the system, contrasted with that overwhelming lack of resistance, mostly born from innocence or disbelief.
And the surprising reactions, too. That relief, even happiness some felt when the waiting was finally over. It shows the incredible psychological burden people were under before the arrest.
Yeah, that was really eye-opening. It makes you think about what resonates most. For me, maybe it's that image of walking down the stairs on tiptoe, the quiet compliance in the face of annihilation.
It's powerful, isn't it? And it leads to that final thought, that nagging question the source leaves us with. Thinking about that universal innocence, that universal failure to act. What does it really tell us? Not just about that specific time and place, but maybe about freedom itself. about resistance. How do we react when faced with pressures, maybe more subtle ones today, or just overwhelming information that makes us feel helpless? It prompts you to ask yourself, doesn't it? What would you do when some kind of gate, metaphorical or real, swings open in front of you?